Hereafter, you will find a detailed explanation of Duel Fighters gameplay. Duel Fighters is a one-on-one combat game where both opponents have to take advantage of all their skills and fighting techniques to defeat an opponent. Each fighter, depending on their physical condition and abilities, specializes in a certain type of combat. Each of them has their own character sheet describing all of their abilities, such as the skills specific to each race, special techniques, attacks, defense, etc. All of them are thoroughly described on their character sheets, which are essential for playing Duel Fighters. Each player has a specific number of movement markers that are used to move the fighter through the game. Equipment cards provide each character with a number of advantages that will enhance their performance in combat. It is also possible to use them as action cards, however this will reduce their ability to move if they are utilized. Additionally, other movement markers such as attacks, life and experience points can be used. Turn 1. This is the initial layout for the Duel Fighters game. The arrangement should be agreed between the players prior to starting while maintaining a minimum distance between any card and the edge of the game board. The figures must start with the sides of the bases parallel to the edges of the game board and separated by no more than half a card from the ends. Gameplay always starts with an initiative roll in order to decide who starts. Each player throws a number of dice equal to the value of his intelligence level on his character sheet. Harold will therefore launch 3 dice and Shag only 2. The wins obtained in the initial dice roll not only determine which player has the initiative, however, in addition, for every win achieved, the adversary must reveal a step of their movement sequence. Combat in Duel Fighters is realized through a sequence of movements divided into steps. Each player has as many steps per turn as action cards that their character possesses. As a general rule, a step consists of 2 movements or 1 attack. As Harold got 3 wins, he gets to see the next 3 steps of the movement sequence that Shag had planned and can therefore anticipate him far more easily. Players now study the opponent's planned moves. The player that won the initial roll of the dice must now decide who will make the first move and complete their movement sequence. As mentioned previously, a movement sequence has at the most as many steps as the action cards that the character possesses. Each step will use up an action card. However, it is not necessary to exhaust all of the action cards during the movement sequence. Action cards can be held back in order to use objects and perform improvised attacks. When both players confirm that they have completed their moves, they raise their screens and show their complete movement sequence. As Harold decided that Shag should begin, he makes the first step in his movement sequence. In this case, a forward movement that is the length of a card and a lateral movement that is the width of a card. Harold now moves his first step. He sequences from left to right, which he starts with a straight movement and thereafter a 90-degree turn. There are 5 types of common markers in Duel Fighters. Frontal movement that allows you to move a card directly forward. Lateral motion that allows you to move the width of a card to the right or left without changing the direction that the character is facing. Rotation, allowing a character to turn 90 degrees on its current position. Attack, this allows a character to try to strike his opponent depending on his attack capability and his special attack, which enables him to use one of his character's special actions as described on his character sheet. At this stage, Harold knows, from his initiative roll, more or less what Shag's position will be at the end of step 3. Shag has planned an attack. However, the reach required to be able to attack his adversary is determined by the length of an action card placed in any position, which shows that both characters are out of reach of one another, resulting in Shark's attack being lost. Harold performs his last step in his movement sequence. As there are no remaining steps available, first turn ends and the second turn begins. Turn 2. The next turn begins once again with an initiative roll. It's not surprising, given his character's great intelligence level, that yet again Harold has the initiative this turn. In this case, Shark must show his next two steps and Harold only one. Harold is more likely to anticipate Shark's movements under normal circumstances and should exploit this in order to get as much advantage over him as possible in combat, or otherwise the greater offensive strength of Shark will make him bite the dust sooner or later. Harold decides, after seeing his rival's movements, that Shark should once again move first. The players prepare and complete their movement sequences for this turn, hidden under their character sheets so that the opponent cannot see it. As they are much closer to one another than before, much more combat action than in the previous turns is to be expected. Blue skull icons signify normal attacks, while gold skulls are special attacks and techniques. Shark begins to move, firstly with a turn and then a frontal movement. Harold does the same thing to get out of his range of attack. When the card that is used to move touches a fixed scenery element, the character is obliged to stop exactly in the place where the base and the item collide. If the item is not dangerous, nothing else happens. Harold performs his movement by turning and moving forward. It's Shark's turn and he has planned his attack. Using a card, he checks and confirms that yes, this time he is within reach, and proceeds to throw the dice. Shark can throw as many dice as indicated by his attack level on his character sheet. His base attack is 5. However, as he is holding an equipment card that allows him to add one additional dice throw, he will have 6 dice to try to injure Harold. Each throw of 4 or more in a given result will result in a strike to his opponent. Shark obtains a score of 6, 6, 5, 3, 2 and 2, giving him 3 hits to his opponent and 1 experience point for each 6 obtained. Harold must now defend himself against the hits that Shark has inflicted on him. He rolls the 5 dice that he's allowed to, as indicated on his character sheet, in order to defend himself against the 3 hits. It is worth mentioning that 6 impacts are considered critical and can only be blocked by obtaining another 6 in a defensive dice roll. Harold has rolled 6, 5, 5, 5 and 1, obtaining 4 wins. Under normal circumstances, it would have been enough to have stopped all the hits. Shark, however, obtained 2 6s, which means that Harold needed to have obtained at least 2 6s to block them, and Harold therefore receives a wound. Shark takes 2 victory points as a result of his 6, and Harold 1 for his 6 in defense and loses 1 of his life points. Harold plays a new movement step and passes out of Shark's reach, ending up on his flank. Shark undertakes a new attack on Harold, but as he is out of range, the action is lost. Harold's next attack is a flanking action, with the result that Shark's defensive possibilities are greatly reduced. Harold throws the 4 dice he is allowed as indicated by his attack level in his character sheet. The resulting roll of the dice are 2 wins, which Shark must try to match in his defensive roll to avoid receiving 2 wounds. As Shark has been flanked, his next dice roll is very challenging, with only a 5 or 6 being enough. If he could throw and obtain a win, he would have had the option to sacrifice it and receive a strike in exchange for rotating 90 degrees to face off directly against Harold. Shark receives 2 wins as he only obtained a dice score of 5 or 6. Even though he could cancel out all the damage he received, he decides to lose a life point and face off with his opponent. Harold has planned a special attack, the Blade Whirlwind. This attack could make his opponent lose an action card for every 2 wounds, as long as the requirements are met when launching this attack. He launches his attack dice roll and gets 4 hits. Shark launches his defense dice roll and gets 2 wins and therefore only receives 2 wounds and subsequently will have 4 actions left in the next turn. The round is finished. However, Shark still has an action card that he hasn't used. As long as it is his turn, Shark could use it to make an improvised attack. Improvised attacks only have a 5 to 6% chance of succeeding. Shark rolls his dice to try and injure Harold, even knowing that during the next turn he will have 1 less action. That was so weak that Harold doesn't even have to do anything to defend himself. Turn 3. Ready? Another round starts and Shark has his back against the wall. The players throw their initiative roll. Shark gets 2 wins and Harold only 1, which means that Harold can only see the first of Shark's actions before playing his movement sequence. In a situation like this, Shark normally wouldn't hesitate playing his first, since his greatest strength gives him the advantage when now face to face. However, Harold's previous attack has left him with only 4 remaining actions. If they decide to trade hits without moving, Harold's 5 attacks might be too harsh a punishment. We will see what happens. Both players put down the actions that they have to show their opponent. Shark decides to play first after seeing what Harold has put down. The players proceed to cover their actions and complete the rest of their movement sequence hidden from the other. Shark now has a chance to perform one of his lethal special attacks, as Harold, having lost initiative, cannot take any action before he can. Shark can choose between his brutal smash that causes twice the damage to any opponent directly in front of him, or the slam back, driving his enemy back as many cards as the wounds he inflicts. It looks like it's going to be the latter option, with Shark attempting to move his opponent back and subsequently attack him and finally end his movement sequence with a second special attack. If he manages to do this, things will get very hairy for Harold. The players raise their covering cards and here we go! We'll see what happens with Shark's first special attack. Shark decides, as was expected, to attack Harold with a slam back. Shark rolls the dice and gets 4 wins out of the 6th thrown, which is not a bad result at all. Harold should try to block the hits or he will find himself flat on his back by as many card widths as the amount of injuries he ends up suffering. Harold rolls his 5 dice and only gets a 5, thereby ending up with 3 wounds and having to move back the width of 3 cards. Pretty lucky for Harold, as he doesn't collide with any obstacle and therefore will not receive any additional damage. He would otherwise have received a hit for each card that overlapped with the obstacle. As he has received 3 hits in the same attack, he falls to the floor at the end of his movement sequence, as this is more than what he can endure. Harold loses his turn after the hit as he has fallen, and so it's Shark's turn again. Shark moves forward to attack Harold again. However, it seems that his slamback attack was too successful, and his strike falls short by millimeters. Harold has planned a special attack and the Orc is at a perfect distance to try any of his special attacks on. He uses the Cracker, an attack aimed at eliminating any rival's defense. It increases the difficulty by 1 point, but if he manages to wound him at least once, the opponent will lose all his defense dice during the next attack. What bad luck! Harold hasn't managed to get a win with any of his dice, and Shark is left unharmed and on his guard. Shark carries out another of his special attacks. This time it's the brutal smash. This attack concentrates all of Shark's strength in a single devastating blow, which causes double the damage for every hit. If it fails, however, Shark is vulnerable to a counter-attack. This special attack can only be done if the rival is exactly in front of him. He rolls the dice and gets 4 hits, which could be transformed into nothing less than 8 wounds that would finish off all of Harold's remaining life points and practically finish the duel. Fortunately for Harold, he manages to block the critical additional 2 hits and so only loses 2 life points. Harold's next step is a move action. Shark's slamback probably thwarted all of his planned movement strategy, although it fortunately took him out of the Orc's reach. Shark has a sidestep in his selection of actions. This movement, together with his much greater physique, could move Harold. In this instance, since they are at the end of the sequences, it won't have much of an impact. But in some cases, a timely executed push could put paid to a carefully planned move or even knock your opponent into a trench or a death trap. Shark pushes Harold against the barrels and they suffer a hit according to Harold's physique level. Harold could also suffer injuries from this blow. The dice are rolled to see if the barrels will handle the hit. Different colored dice must be rolled for each one, as the large and small barrel have different resistances. The small barrel endures the impact and is harmless. The large one is shattered and injures Harold. Harold has still 2 steps more, since Shark lost actions due to his failed special attack. The first thing he will do will be to turn 90 degrees and subsequently launch an attack to Shark's flank. We will see if with this attack he can even things up, because during his 3rd turn things have been rather difficult for the Crusader. As we have already seen, Shark is quite predictable, but if he can deliver one of his special attacks, he can finish the fight very soon. Harold rolls the dice to attack, and once again fails to connect with a hit, leaving him in quite a bad situation. Turn 4. Turn 4 begins, and as things stand at the moment, it might be the last. All cards are picked up so that each player has all of his actions and another initiative roll is thrown. The players each throw and both get a hit. Tie! When this happens, the tiebreaker is not decided until both players have prepared and shown each other their complete movement sequence. Not knowing who will play means that no character has a clear advantage during the initiative roll this time. As we have said previously, the players show their sequences as divined by the opponent. However, unlike in other turns where one was the winner in the initiative roll and decided who would start moving first, in this case, both must complete their movement sequences prior to knowing which player moves or attacks first. The players show their full movement sequences, and the moment of truth has finally arrived. By throwing a single die, whoever obtains the highest decides who will move first. Wow! Another draw! In this case, the players keep throwing until one of them has the highest score. Shark finally has the highest roll and gets the initiative, this time around. In view of the sequences he saw, he decides that Harold should move first. Harold makes a double lateral move away from Shark, attempting to get around to his undefended back. Shark only makes a turn. It would appear that the player who controls him has read his adversary's movements very well. He realized when looking at Harold's movement sequence earlier that Harold had made a mistake, which is why he let him play first. Harold makes a turn and a movement that places him directly in front of Shark. This error could cost him the game. Shark has 2 moves forward. However, being so close together and not having enough space to build up momentum, this is not considered a shove. Shoving can cause a lot of damage, but a push at the right place can quickly finish off a rival that doesn't have a strong physique. The movement is directly through a barrel, which once again creates the likelihood that the collision causes harm to Harold. The barrel doesn't offer any resistance and yet again hurts Harold. The Crusader has another wound and now only has 1 point left. Harold makes a turn. And Shark performs a normal attack. He picks up his dice and rolls, attempting to get rid of Harold's last point. Oof! 3 criticals and 2 hits! The strike has been terrible, and it is highly possible that Harold will fail to avoid all injuries, as he will have to get at least 3 6s and 2 4s or more. He manages to avoid 4 hits, but none of the criticals, and so loses the last life point he had left. Harold has lost the battle. As we have seen, in Duel Fighters, an error in strategy can prove fatal. Please be aware that all the elements used in this video are prototypes, and in the final game might suffer minor variations. The rules are currently in beta version and might be subject to slight modification. We hope that you've enjoyed this demo of how to play Duel Fighters and that it has provided you with an insight of the dynamics of this game.